All right. So thanks everyone for joining us today. And today I want to talk about scaling content operations. And what I think, you know, modernizing the CMS, typically, we're all in the Sitecore ecosystem. That means XM Cloud. I think it's just the first step, and it's usually not the only kind of thing to think about. And I just want to say, like, kind of throughout this presentation, obviously, I'm going to talk about how Sitecore Content Hub plays a critical role in solving kind of those deeper content challenges. So, a little bit about me. I'm Petar Mitev. I'm an independent DAM, digital asset management and content operations consultant. I've been working with Sitecore Content for over a year, 10 years now. I'm also strategy MVP this year for the first time, 2025. I've been living in, beautiful Brazil since 2023. Gave you already my story, but prior to coming to Brazil, I was at Sitecore working in different roles. So I've seen the product inside and out. Now with the external experiences, it's been really, really interesting kind of experience, and I wanted to share that a little bit with this presentation today. So let's see, is it going to the next one? Yeah. All right, 100%. Everyone has probably seen this this is not new anymore, but 100% is the revenue growth of Sitecore XM Cloud for last year. That's Sitecore's fastest growing product ever. And while there's many reasons, I think interest primarily reflects that kind of broader shift across a lot of companies and industries moving to more modern cloud native headless CMS solutions, giving more marketer agility, enterprise scalability, and improved kind of delivery speeds for page loads and so on through headless solutions. But while this CMS modernization is an important step, I think it's just the beginning of laying the foundations of for digital transformation. So organizations really aren't solving deeper underlying challenges that are I think very often prevalent beyond digital teams responsible for the web strategy. Disconnected content teams, inefficiencies in getting content ready, lack of governance, lack of really any processes, and difficult to reuse content, which is costly because you pay for content to recreate, and so on. And these are not CMS problems. This is not the fault of Sitecore XP or Sitecore XM Cloud. These are operational problems. These are content operational problems specifically, content lifecycle problems. And this is what we're going to focus on today. So just kind of give a little bit of context, content today is created everywhere. Marketing teams build campaigns, product teams write descriptions, features, benefits, spec sheets. So kind of the landscape that you see here in the content chaos, as we call it. Designers and agencies create visuals and videos. Sales and regional teams adapt content for local markets. And now with AI tools and agentic workflows, that's all generating content at scale with more speed but increasing compliance and reliability concerns. And also, none of it lives in one place. It's all scattered across CMSs, CRMs, PLMs, shared drives, different kind of systems, email threads, you name it, pen drives for some. And this creates that content chaos as we talk about teams duplicated. Teams have duplicated efforts, and nobody knows what's approved or final. Content is inconsistent across channels, and ultimately, time to market slows down. A modern CMS alone cannot fix this problem. It doesn't cover upstream planning, collaboration, or internal approvals and workflows. Everyone knows there's a workflow engine in XM Cloud, but I haven't seen a lot of adoption of that. And it's only for CMS content. It doesn't solve the workflow problem, the content operations problem upstream above your CMS needs. And so while modernizing your CMS with XM Cloud coupled with personalization addresses these front-end digital experiences that are contextually relevant to your customers, ultimately your teams still work in silos, storing assets in disconnected tools, or storing assets in the CMS media library that doesn't address these kind of more sophisticated needs for organizing assets and content, making them more easily findable and searchable, making them more easily reusable. There's no single source of truth for content as teams are still also using SharePoint and Dropboxes. Every day I talk about this. Every day I meet clients that store their stuff in SharePoint, in drives, and so on, without metadata and consistency in taxonomies, with manual approvals processes, or just using emails for those. And even when content is created, it's hard to scale and reuse across all channels. So that kind of all this impacts governance, time to market, and an overall customer experience. Modern CMS platforms like XM Cloud improve the front-end experience, give more agility to developers and marketers, but unless content operations are modernized too, the backend, that whole backend mess stays. So to truly scale, you need a structure across the full content lifecycle and not just your website. And obviously here is where Sitecore Content Hub comes in as way more than just a dam to replace an outdated or scattered media libraries across multiple instances in your CMS. And this is what I usually get from my clients. We need to consolidate our media libraries into one dam, but you're overlooking the larger problem and the larger solution that Content Hub offers. It's an omni-channel content platform built to unify how content is planned, created, managed, and delivered across the whole enterprise. So that brings structure to fragmented operations, helps teams work together, using one single source of truth for content across all channels. So a little bit about that. Sitecore Content Hub was created with the holistic vision in mind to unify marketing content and streamline enterprise-wide collaboration. So what does that mean? Rather than just being a DAM or a CMS extension, an add-on to XM Cloud, Content Hub really aims to centralize structured content management, acting as the connective tissue between systems and departments, transforming content from a really like kind of that tactical necessity that many see into rather an enterprise strategic scalable asset. So a little bit about like kind of this chart. I think this one is so important to grasp, to realize the strategic importance of Content Hub beyond being just a dam. Ultimately, Content Hub aims to assist in aggregating content from various source systems. So on the left side of this kind of chart, you see you might have an ERP system, a product information management system, product lifecycle management system. You might have another DAM. You might have a legacy DAM, or a CRM, or an agency that feeds content through their own system. So all of these systems, you want to make sure you aggregate from these various source systems. Wherever it sits today, the vision is to bring it all together to add more value to your content and assets. Then content is aggregated and organized according to your unique business model. Content really offers a solution that uniquely understands your business model, your brand, your products, your services mix, and kind of that metadata that ties everything together through a flexible entity model. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, ultimately for your go-to-market strategy. Every business has a unique business model. And with capabilities like DAM, digital asset management, content marketing, marketing work management, so all that in the middle here, marketing work management, product content management, it helps you to create a marketing content repository that reflects your unique business. So allowing organizations to create workflows that align with their marketing strategy, team structures, working practices, and collaboration with agencies. All that Also aims to provide capabilities to interface with all your downstream channels, ultimately, again, aiming to become an omni-channel content platform to publish content anywhere, whether that's print, display, out-of-home, web, your CMS, your e-commerce, your search, enterprise search engine, or ultimately also for more advanced personalization needs. Personalization ultimately requires a lot of content, but also requires your content to be modularized in order for it to work at scale. All this together forms a content value chain. So, and while content provides a very large breadth of marketing operation tools, your journey doesn't start by adopting the most complex workflows and, straight out of the gate doing a whole big bang implementation and governance processes and putting everything together at once. Organizations typically start by adopting the foundational capabilities first and continue building out more advanced capabilities as their journey continues, as their maturity grows. We can talk about that a little bit more afterwards as well. So let's look at Content Hub's range of capabilities, starting with its intelligent DAM. For secure AI-powered digital asset management, this is where organizations typically start with. So consolidating your siloed digital assets and content into one single source of truth. The flexible entity model, also people call it PCM, the product content management solution. It allows organizations to define a custom content structure, bespoke workspaces, bespoke UIs, making it truly adaptable for various needs. And here, that unique capability in content have been organizations looking to get value from their total investments on such a platform should really pay attention on that, because how that can solve unique business challenges for their teams and existing tech stack is ultimately going to resort in, okay, how do we get actually a return on our investment in this kind of an expensive enterprise solution? It is a big investment. We want to make sure that you get the most out of it. So, digital apps connector. That ensures seamless integration with creative and productivity tools such as Adobe Creative Cloud, Microsoft, Google Apps, and other types of cloud storage tools. So, as organizations' content operations mature, usually coupled with that kind of top-down push for better governance, efficiency, and visibility across their content strategy. More advanced content operations can be adopted where content teams manage their content production with centralized governance and workflows. So this is where the content marketing platform, CMP, enables that kind of modular content lifecycle automation and omni-channel distribution. This typically starts with their main channel distribution needs. I see this often, starts with the website. Hey, our website team is doing a lot of structured content. We'll talk about that later. But structured content where you don't need to change the layout every single time you create a blog post, for instance, or a case study, or another type of or a news release, etc. So that requires kind of that pulling it out from your CMS channel, putting a content structure in place, putting workflow, and then so on. For example, travel and entertainment industries, travel and entertainment industry, they have more explicit omni-channel needs, and their website is not their main channel. So while it starts with the website usually, it's not always the case. A lot of organizations have more proliferated omni-channel needs. That's where this becomes even more important. Marketing projects, or also called the marketing work management solution, helps teams efficiently plan, track, and manage content production and campaigns. This is where content operations maturity really shapes up to build solutions and processes that take control of the entire process end-to-end for cross-teams collaboration and governance. And lastly, content publisher. That's an add-on to Content Hub, but it does allow marketers to create graphics at scale for digital and print through customizable smart templates. This is usually adopted in industries where digital content and layouts are produced in multiple regions and localizations by local marketing teams with a lot of volume, but with little design variation. So where you kind of like, oh, we need to change the basically we just want to translate something into 15 different languages and then produce it at scale because we have variation in the price, for example. So a lot of volume, little design variation, so you can therefore customize smart templates that really cut down costs of ultimately that digital content production. We looked at how Content Hub capabilities get gradually adopted across organizations as their needs evolve. Now let's look at actually how typical content operations maturity journey looks like in an organization. So scaling content operations is a gradual evolution, not an instant transformation. Organizations typically start in an ad hoc ops state, where content is fragmented across siloed repositories, managed with manual workflows, typically involving email, Word, Excel, stored in SharePoint, OneDrive, you name it, leading to the obvious inefficiencies and duplication. The first step towards maturity is centralization. Consolidate your assets in your content using a DAM with structured metadata and taxonomy to create consistency. So that's where, as the organizations progress, they move into the structured stage, where content governance begins to take shape, while workflows are still largely departmental and ad hoc. This is where you imply, you start with basic governance and basic processes, or even no processes at all, because you're still consolidating everything into one single place. And right next stage, integrated stage, is where cross-team collaboration and integration happens. Take a sip of my water. Marketing, digital experience, sales, product teams, they all work within shared workflows, leveraging automation and structured content for partial omni-channel use. I'm saying partial because you do want to integrate with, let's say, your website, your main channel, or for retail, or for point of sale. But you don't want to start with everything. Doing everything at once it's complex. And also there's the human factor of adoption. Humans are resistant to change, as we all know. And it's in that kind of stage, you try to integrate your most critical teams and your most critical systems, leveraging automation where possible, leveraging shared workflows. And in the next optimized stage, I think where content operations are truly kind of becoming fully enterprise-wide shaped into fully enterprise-wide adoption with AI pipelines, agentic workflows, automation, personalization. This is future state. This is what every organization wants to get to. With personalization at scale and modular content reuse, enabling that kind of efficient omnichannel content delivery ultimately. So while each stage increases efficiency, reuse, and time to market, as you can see with the vertical axis here on the left, it also requires process maturity. So that's what represented in the horizontal axis on the bottom. So establishing processes is ultimately that kind of process maturity is required to establish governance, change management, and operating model. And Sitecore Content Hub is here the enabler that helps organizations progress through this journey efficiently, giving the technology for teams and processes to become more mature. I think this is the most important one to align with stakeholders with your business. Scaling Content Hub adoption is not an overnight transformation. It requires a phased approach to ensure long-term success. So you need to work in a roadmap work on a roadmap, sorry, to provide the business a structured way to implement Content Hub, starting with foundational steps. So gradually expanding to full enterprise adoption, starting with strategy, doing that kind of foundations, then rolling out to your pilot, to your first few champions, teams, and then scaling to enterprise-wide adoption, and then ultimately optimizing and optimizing. This is an endless program. Content Hub, damn typically, digital asset management should not be seen as a project, should be seen as a continuous transformation, as a continuous program. So let's go through the key phases here. Phase one, strategy and MVP definition. MVP, right? Understanding business needs. We start by aligning with business stakeholders to identify priorities and pain points. The goal here is to define that minimal viable product. That what does success looks like for that phase one? What problems we solve first and how we measure success. In a lot of my projects, I'm doing content implementations as part of an XM Cloud larger website transformation, website redesign, migration, where measure of success is our digital web team needs to be able to leverage a single repository with better taxonomy, with better search, easy to find, with some basic workflows, with governance, and that's fine. You can start with defining that, the measure of success, defining that kind of business needs at first, and then you build on as your needs grow in the platform, as more teams start on board into it. So common priorities include eliminating content silos, improving governance, and increasing content reuse. Phase two, building a scalable foundation. And that starts with a scalable content model. So before we start anything, before we discuss workflow, before we discuss governance, before we discuss integrations, before we discuss anything, we start by, before we discuss migration, we need to start discussing the structure of your content. That means defining the assets metadata model, defining the taxonomy. Do we need to have taxonomy? Multiple systems? Does Content Hub become the single source of truth for all of your taxonomies? And then role governance to ensure consistency. We also validate that content model with real use cases before rolling out at scale. So doing a sample migration or, So in phase three, next up, phase three, centralize content and pilot. So once you've built that foundation setup, now that you have a structured model, now that you have that kind of basic model, basic role governance in place, you can start consolidating and migrating your content into a single source of truth. So migration here should be phased. Migrate everything at once. Prioritize high impact content first to minimize disruption. That typically starts with all content that is required from a website redesign or a web migration project, as I alluded earlier with XM Cloud, CMS modernization initiatives. Start with, and it doesn't always need to be automated migration. It's actually quite often a manual entry effort. So as your content teams migrate, or let's say enter content on the website, every week they migrate, let's say 50 pages. That means every week for these 50 pages, you need to migrate also the relevant assets for those into Content Hub. And you do that in batches, gradually. Some content can be automated, but if your origin system from where you're migrating lacks structure, lacks metadata, and lacks taxonomies, it's going to be challenging for these teams to figure out an automated strategy. That means ultimately, it will be a manual effort in the beginning. It will be a manual effort to classify and enrich your assets into now a more robust data model, a robust structure. But it's important. Phase four, Excuse me. Phase four, enabling cross-team workflows and integrations. So here, right, Content Hub is more than a repository, it's an operational platform. At this stage, we start connecting workflows across teams. We start onboarding teams into the platform across different departments, marketing, sales, e-commerce, and then ultimately also integrating Content Hub with CMS, with CRM and other backend systems to ensure raw content information also flows and enriches our digital assets to provide more value for the downstream systems. Things like specs and features and technical information about our products. We want to make sure that this is present, this is aggregated from our backend systems prior to pushing it out into our downstream systems for consumption by our um, e-commerce system or whatever it is that is relevant in our case here. And then phase five, automating and optimizing content operations. So really kind of once workflows are in place, or even if some workflows are in place, you can continue to automate workflows more, introducing automation, manual actions that are typically happening between teams, repetitive actions can be automated. Um, Anything from AI-powered tagging, obviously the most simple use cases to workflow automation and agentic workflows and ultimately omni-channel distribution across the whole landscape. So this phase focuses on scalability and long-term efficiency. So again, emphasis is on continuous optimization and automation, because this is not going to happen just once. You're going to keep optimizing and you're going to keep automating wherever there's an opportunity for. So by following this roadmap, organizations can see quick wins early while setting up a foundation for enterprise-wide transformation, book quick wins early, and demonstrate key success metrics by starting small, providing value, right? And then demonstrating that value across the organization beyond just your digital team or your marketing team, because that allows you to scale strategically the operations, but also the whole enterprise-wide adoption of Content Hub, which is important to justify the initial investment of such a platform. If it's just adopted by a single department, single team, it's almost sure that at some point there will be a lot of friction from leadership on why you're spending so much money on such a sophisticated platform when it's not adopted across your whole organization. This is very, very crucial. And to fully leverage Sitecore Content Hub and kind of to continue on that thought that I was just talking about, we need to ensure enterprise adoption. Organizations must look beyond just marketing and basic DAM capabilities. Different teams across the business can benefit from more structured content operations. So here, can kind of give you a few examples of how the enterprise can benefit. The obvious one, Marcoms, marketing and communications teams can streamline campaign execution, maintain brand consistency, maintain governance, make sure everything is on brand, ensure assets are found easily within their marketing team. But also sales teams, sales enablement teams can ensure access to the latest approved sales collateral, reducing outdated materials, streamlining the creation and approval processes. Product teams can improve consistency in product content enrichment, enriching content and assets easily onto products or service descriptions, or adding specs, documents, and feature descriptions into one single place. E-commerce teams, in turn, can optimize their product catalogs for digital channels and automate marketing workflows. I realize product catalogs are typically in the commerce solution, but Content Hub can perfectly solve that as well as a need in some cases where it might be relevant. These are just examples. Digital experience teams, and this is a big one that I encounter a lot. They can benefit from pulling out structured content from the CMS. Again, going back to my example earlier, structured content that is created with a lot of volume, repeatedly using the same layout, the same template in the CMS, that can be managed in Content Hub CMP. And so then you let the CMS, XM Cloud, be responsible for your web-based content, layout experiences building, the site management, all the other web CMS specific things, and you take out the structured content management, the creation and production of pure content, have it done in Content Hub. Typical examples: blogs, case studies, news releases, story content, insights, events, or even generic modular content blocks that can be kind of as part of a more sophisticated omnichannel atomic content delivery for more dynamic kind of personalized experiences. We don't see that a lot because it's for much more sophisticated organizations. But if you have the maturity, if you have the processes in place, and you have also the technical in-house knowledge, that can be really kind of that next level and driving innovation in the organization with this kind of a solution. Corporate communications and HR, human resources, so can efficiently manage structured press releases, announcements, and internal content, onboarding materials, have your, all of that kind of these digital assets and training resource and policy docs into one single place. So this whole cross-functional alignment accelerates content maturity, ultimately eliminates redundancies in using similar platforms that are, are adopted across different teams and departments. That happens often. Happens often that one department is using one tool and another department is using another tool, and they're solving similar needs. So eliminating that redundancy, reinforcing content as an enterprise-wide asset. So I think I didn't use up all of my time. I talked a lot. I want to make sure there's time for questions, or if anyone has any interesting thoughts about what I talked about.
Yeah, there is one question, two questions in the chat. Thanks, Carlos Rodriguez. We'll figure out a way to get you the pen or swags. Question one is do we know if Content Hub content can be directly accessible from XM Cloud or XP CMS if there's a connector for the content?
Yep, I'm reading questions. So let's start with question one. So are you referring to digital assets or structured content?
Carlos, I will allow you to speak. Feel free to unmute yourself.
The answer to both is yes, there is a connector, but it depends, right? So
yeah, I've been sort of bugging them about that because you create all this great content in Content Hub, but then now you're maintaining something different on the CMS in order to populate pages, and that just seems like a redundant thing to do.
what we typically do in these kind of projects where we bring structured content into Content Hub and then let XM Cloud manage the layout is we either use the CMP connector to push, let's say my blog post, push it from Content Hub, it's ready. So your fields, your pure text content and the images are inside of Content Hub. They get pushed over the connector, over the bridge, and then in XM Cloud it gets mapped into a layout, a fixed template. So all the fields from Content Hub will be mapped into fields in XM Cloud. Yes, your content will actually be copied. I think that's a drawback of the way the connector was designed originally. The architecture is in fact copying it over into the content tree, but ultimately you're not going to be managing sorry, you're not going to be changing the copy, the text of the blog post in XM Cloud. In XM Cloud, what we typically do in these kind of projects, we automate it all the way down to like, look, if it's a fixed layout, it's using always the same template in XM Cloud. You're just going to use end-to-end the workflow tools in Content Hub and get it pushed over into XM Cloud on a blog post page. It creates a new page, it uses the layout, maps the fields, maps the images with public links across from DAM, and then it gets published onto that page and then you can even do more like kind of custom logic to publish it on a specific date. That's one approach. However, there's also the headless approach, where with static site generation, you can just basically directly in the head app, on the head app, or even a component level, you can fetch content from Content Hub directly from the GraphQL through the headless delivery endpoint. There are some concerns about, hey, what about API rate limits? Yes, that's true. The GraphQL endpoint from Edge in Content Hub has a lower API limit than Edge in XM Cloud, but that can be solved with certain solutions. Let's say I'm not going to talk about these, that's more technical, but there's ways with, I think it's called incremental static site generation or something like that. Not exactly sure. Does that answer your question, Carlos?
Yes, it does actually. Thank you.
All right.
And the
Perfect. And
second
then the
question I will
question.
just read aloud, which is question 2 for the rest of the audience. What is typically the learning curve to understand how to set up a mature content model and governance to leverage the type of content management discussed in this presentation?
Man, that's a good one, Carlos. The learning curve to understand how to set up a mature content model and governance. Yes, it's a steep learning curve. I mean, honestly, I'm in this business 10 years now and I'm still learning. This is learnings that I have from the last year and a half that I'm sharing with you. So, from my personal perspective, yeah, this is another beast. But honestly, it's also there needs to be a leadership drive from the organization to be actually on that path. If there's no ownership and kind of stakeholders and C-level buy-in on this type of a, let's say, maturity model, you're not gonna, even if you know you know everything, if you even if you know everything about it and you advocate for it to your customer, you won't book a lot of successes because this needs to be an enterprise-wide strategic kind of initiative. I hope this makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I used to work for Sitecore, so believe me, I know.
Sorry, you still work for Sitecore?
No, I used to.
I
He
used
used
to.
to.
Ah, you're ex-Sitecore as well. I didn't know.
Hmm.
Cool.
Carlos
Yeah.
was part of the training team, if I know well, right,
Yep.
Carlos?
Yes, I was.
Cool.
Right.
Any other questions from the chat, folks? Giving away pens, beautiful pens today, white ones. Stickers, lip balms. 5 minutes left. Um, you mentioned a little about justifying the cost of a tool like Content Hub. Um, can you elaborate, Peter, about the strategical things that we can bring to show value, not just with Content Hub, but with any DAM similar to it?
Yeah. Justifying, kind of creating a business case is ultimately what you need to do. You need to demonstrate what's what's the business need, why do we need it, and because So what you don't want to do is have a tool that is bought by your digital ops team, digital experience team. It's typically the case, like a CMS, and then you have Content Hub as an add-on for supporting your website migration kind of initiative. That's limited, and it forces you down to work only with limited use cases. And it's difficult to justify this kind of an investment unless Sitecore gave a huge discount on as an add-on, which I guess they're doing quite a lot. But I think what I'm trying to say here is you need to ensure that this is seen as an enterprise-wide asset beyond just your web teams, beyond digital experience teams. This needs to be seen as a corporate asset, and ensuring that there's a business case for that across the organization.